My name's James King, and I'm one of the account executives at Redgate Software. I'm joined today by Tony Maddonna, who is one of the, I guess, senior platform lead at BMW.
Microsoft Platform Lead and SQL Enterprise Architect. Yeah.
Sorry, a bit of a title there, a bit better than mine. But yeah, Tony and I have known each other for a little while. We've been working together for a number of years, and we thought as part of this SQL in the City stream, it'd be quite nice to have a conversation just to get an insight into what it's like to be, I guess, dealing with such a large estate and such a large, environment when you're especially coming towards monitoring. So, I guess Tony, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? How long you've been with BMW for?
Well, geez, I've worked. Obviously, BMW opened a plant here in South Carolina, 1992, I believe is when they broke ground. So initially, I had worked with them through an integration firm for a few years, doing consulting work on and off, and then was with IBM for a while. Came on and did some more consulting work, but officially came on board with them in 2011, and it's been a ride ever since.
So it's quite a few years you've had to get used to this estate. Has it grown much in that time?
Yes, it's grown substantially. We, being in Microsoft Platform Services, we focus around any Microsoft product and integration there. And SQL was secondary to Oracle for the most part, but that's starting to shift out, and more development in the Microsoft arena has caused SQL to grow substantially over the past few years. So it's an ever-evolving, ever-growing environment.
So I guess that probably poses part of the challenge, right? It's growing, it's evolving. How do you keep on top of all that sort of stuff?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult, especially since we're like any other company where we do more with less. So it gets to a point where you tend to go into reactive mode more than proactive mode. And that was one of the reasons why I guess it's been probably maybe 5 years now or so since we engaged with Redgate, when we started to say, hey, how can we do a little bit more proactive viewing into our systems, or get some better insight into systems that are having a problem where we do have to react to, and getting data sets real time so that we can reduce the amount of business impact and downtime. So that was one of the initial streams in getting us together, and then ever since then, it's been a great partnership.
So I guess obviously you mentioned the trigger there, trying to be more proactive rather than reactive. What were you guys doing before?
Um, Before it was pretty much a typical database shop, right? So you had certain monitors. We obviously use Microsoft tools like SCOM and other things to do monitoring, and you basically waited for a problem and then reacted to the problem. So we always tried to be on the front end of patching and planning the infrastructure to the point where machines were well allocated, instances were well allocated. We had a good distribution of databases across the infrastructure, and machines weren't overwhelmed or oversubscribed. But again, doing that manually for maybe 30, 40, 50 machines, okay. But when you start getting into hundreds of servers that are operated globally in different time zones, it becomes very difficult. So obviously you have to engage some third-party product or write your own, and we didn't really want to go down that road. So
Yeah, I guess not. Probably more difficult maintaining something like that than anything. But when you talk about sort of hundreds of servers, how many servers do you have, and geographically, how are you set up? Because obviously it's a global operation.
I don't have a firm number off the top of my head. We made a shift a few years back from being more virtual to being more physical because of licensing costs. So it actually, we were able, with the increase in footprint of newer hardware and better processing power, we were able to consolidate things down into standard Windows clusters and SQL clusters. So I would say ballpark, we have probably 400 to 500 servers running globally. But the server class is quite large. We're talking, multi-terabytes of RAM with, 32 procs or so. So it's a pretty big footprint.
Yeah, that's not a small estate to look after at the end of the day. And I mean, how many people are looking after that? I mean, obviously you're heading this up, but
Um, I don't know when I want to divulge that number because people will think we're insane, but we actually have we actually only have 5 internal people. We do have a partner provider that we guide through all together too. But I would say cumulatively, globally, we're probably looking at about a dozen, maybe 15.
wow. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty impressive with the size of estate. But I guess it comes back to this doing more with less, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly, and trying to be as efficient as you can with what you have. We not only develop the solutions and try to stay in check with Microsoft's release, but we're also part of the Microsoft Alpha program. We work with Microsoft in a lot of things that we do, and we also automate our installation routines so that everything is standardized. So there's a significant amount of scripting that we do on the front end to package the solution to make sure all the scenarios look the same, all the servers are set up the same way. And lately there's been also an increase with security issues and other types of concerns that have caused overhead to refocus us. So we don't have the luxury of spending as much time on the operational side as we do on the dev side. So we try to balance that as well as we can to be able to deliver, again, a consistent, uniform environment with the highest amount of uptime that we can. And thankfully, we've been very blessed as far as not having any type of catastrophic events for a while. Knock on wood. So.
Yeah. I guess also, I mean, you mentioned obviously you have to keep on top of patching. I mean, has the speed of the releases with Microsoft mean that having a holistic view across your estate has been much more important to you?
It does. It does. Again, one of the things that we battled for the longest time is just pure inventory, keeping track of things as they come and go, and making sure everything stays up to date. We have our own internal security folks that validate Microsoft patches and other patches and mandate the application in certain time frames and whatnot. So it works well in conjunction with our third party provider to be able to go in and schedule these types of things and try to keep Patch Tuesday, as Microsoft so lovingly calls it, sort of a monthly ritual. So,
Well, it's good. At least you are keeping on top of this sort of stuff. Um,
we try. We try.
I guess coming back to sort of monitoring side of things, if you went from nothing to monitoring your estate. I mean, 500 servers, that's a big estate. Was implementing a new tool quite a tricky thing to do?
Actually, in all honesty, Redgate was very nice to implement. It was pretty easy. We're regional, obviously being global. We split regionally just to be able to coordinate in time zones a little bit easier, as well as to contain WAN traffic. So we placed Redgate monitor servers per region, and then essentially encapsulated those regional servers directly into those boxes. And I have to say, it was a very easy configuration and setup. We did oversubscribe the servers to make sure we had enough capacity to store data for about 3 months minimum, and also collectively make sure there was no bottleneck with the Redgate server to be able to aggregate it, so that in case of a problem that we had real-time data, we can jump on and get good data slices as fast as we could. But no, we actually, it was quite honestly one of the easier things that we have had to do. It was a little bit time consuming, obviously, because we had to, get all the servers configured in. But thankfully, the product is great. We don't have to touch the servers from the product's perspective. So, one of my number one rules of thumb is we don't run any agents on our SQL boxes. So, the fact that Redgate is agentless is a great thing. We don't want to have anything go rogue and cause any type of issues with our database servers. So as a whole, again, it's been great. So it's one of the few things that we don't have to babysit a lot of. So
It's good to hear. Also, I mean, to be fair, we don't want to take down BMW with with our tools. So,
yeah, much
um,
appreciated. Yeah.
I guess obviously again with the rolling out. I mean, you mentioned it was quite time consuming. Did you have to do it bit by bit and then sort of build it up over time, or did you try and load as much of it on as you could as quickly as possible?
We basically separated each region, gave it to a point person, and had them load the base load per region all at once. And then once we had those baselines, we went in and did some configuration. And then as things um, changed in inventory, we added servers, we subtracted servers, we just maintained them on an ad hoc basis. So it we tend to run in spurts where, especially if we're running a new release, we'll get larger amounts of servers, new implementations, and then or we're deprecating something old like SQL 2008 R2, which is end of life in July, and we're phasing those guys out quickly. So we get ebbs and flows of hardware in, and again, as long as you keep up with it, it tends to be pretty easy to manage and maintain. So we've been pretty, like I said, been pretty good so far.
Not been too bad. I mean, how about from the sort of cultural perspective? Obviously, one of the hard things is you get a tool in place, getting people to use the tools that are available to them. I mean, has that been a challenge for you?
It was a little bit of a challenge. Again, the initial deployment of the tool was for us to use internally in operations, and then we did deploy like restricted views for our heavy hitter users, those users that had very high capacity, high transactional databases and wanted to get their own data sets from them. So it took about a year for them to remember, oh, hey, I have a tool here that I could use. Because we have other tools, infrastructure related wise, that will do system class information, but we didn't have anything that would actually do SQL based information. So when we rolled it out, it was always, oh, don't forget you have Redgate. Oh, yeah. And now it's sort of become second nature. So if there is a problem, usually the client is on Redgate before they even call it into us and escalate it as being some sort of an issue. So it's actually, it's an invaluable tool for those who take the time to learn it.
So I guess it's slightly more proactive than you maybe initially planning if they're already looking at it before you get the ticket.
It is, but it's actually a good thing because they know their application more than we do. We provide them the service of the database functions on the servers, but we don't know what their database application is doing. We don't view into their data. So, that being said, when they call us and say, hey, we're having a blocking issue or we're having a lag issue, and we think it's this, then it really comes down to us acting as an escalation group, which we should act as, and just taking a look at it and giving our professional opinion on it, as opposed to spending an hour trying to figure out that someone forgot to put an index on the table. So
No, that's good. That's good. It's nice to be able to sort of give people the power to solve their own problems as well sometimes, right?
right, and again, it's not that they use it; they generally don't use it without relaying it to us. So you don't have guys sitting there watching their applications because they like to see the pretty charts and graphs. But normally they go in there and say, hey, we're experiencing something different. Something's just not quite right. It's like when you wake up in the morning and I don't feel right, take an aspirin or ibuprofen and then move on your merry way. Sort of the same kind of concept. So, we provide them the ibuprofen. They take it. If it doesn't fix it, they call us.
The doctors come in, eh? Um, I guess like uh, uh, I mean, is there any other sort of unexpected benefits you had from this? I mean, I'd kind of say that's almost one, but was there anything else that you thought, oh, actually, I didn't expect that.
Not so much unexpected, but bonuses because we do use it in current state to be able to scale servers appropriately. So as applications increase in both capacity as well as transactional amounts or user counts, we can do a little bit of projective analysis with the heuristics that we store to be able to say, okay, this server is probably not going to cut it for longer than another 6 months. Let's plan on moving this to a new cluster, new hardware, something that's a little bit more robust so that we don't experience any type of either downtime or degraded performance for the client base. So that's been a really good feature of it too. The other thing that it has helped us is to evaluate some of the third-party patches that come out that are known for posing possible disruptions in systems, like the Spectre patches and stuff like that. We were able to do pre and post patch analysis to see, okay, Microsoft and Intel, they say that this patch is going to degrade performance by X. Is that a true statement? And you can sort of get your own litmus based on your environment, and as opposed to accepting the generic span of 8 to 25% degradation. So that's helped us too. So that's been an unexpected plus.
That's good. It was good to hear. I mean, I guess from the perspective as well with ongoing into the future. I mean, is there things in the future you expect to change the way you use the tool, or is there an environment that you expect to change that you think the tool will benefit you for?
I think the one thing that we don't use the tool for that has a lot of power is the custom monitoring function. And I think once we get into, again, a little bit more of proactive mode where we have some time, or customers request certain things, we'd like to use the tool more to script custom monitoring components and be able to run some triggers in there specifically for customer requests. So we've done a few here or there, but it hasn't been something that we've really been able to dedicate time to. So it's been ad hoc again. Customer requests it, we go in and we'll do it. But I know based on the Redgate forums and the community that's out there, there's a lot of people doing a lot of things that are very effective in improving how you get data through the system. And that's something that we'd like to probably get a little bit more in depth with over time.
I guess the sky's the limit with that sort of stuff. It's just how creative you can get to it, and like you say, getting the time to do so, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
And I guess with regards to things like the cloud, I mean, is the cloud a big thing on your radar in the future?
The cloud beats me over the head every day. um, yeah, it's a very big movement to get more things into the cloud, um, to essentially offload building of new data centers or increasing our current capacity. Yeah, that's one of our initiatives over the next 12 months is to start putting some things into the cloud, and doing some testing and a lot of low hanging fruit initially just to get the people and the users that have a lot less sprawl, if you will, or interconnectivity throughout the infrastructure in there that are just simple, single user databases or small test footprints that we can actually leverage the cloud for what it should be used for, which to me is more of an up down kind of scenario, right? So I could spin something up pretty quickly. I could use it for a period of time. I could break it down, and I only have to pay for what I've used it for. As opposed to a lot of times we'll spin up some machines for testing or POC, and 3 months later, customer was done using it, 18 weeks ago, but they finally tell us, oh, we don't need that anymore. And in the meantime, we've utilized resources and space for a period of time that is in excess of what we needed to. So that's a plus. Hopefully that'll come, shortly.
Yeah, great. I guess, yeah, be keeping a closer eye on these things and making sure you're not wasting money or time.
Or
I guess,
resources too.
yeah, well, yeah, I guess, I mean, this is the thing. Obviously, this whole more for less theme is pretty prevalent with you guys. So, yeah, utilizing your resources and things you just don't need to is probably a big thing.
Yep.
I guess from the future perspective as well, I mean, where do you see the future of monitoring going?
Well, again, I think eventually it's going to get a little bit more um, in line with AI practices, right? So I think monitoring will eventually get to the point where someone will write some sort of open source kernel that will actually seed itself. So as it sees things change, it will be able to have a little bit better artificial intelligence application towards it to really differentiate, is this a problem? Is this an anomaly? Is this a trend? So that you won't have to waste time troubleshooting things that really are just computer idiosyncrasies, right? You know, I think anybody that is a consumer of compute always expects this thing to be running 24/7. Those of us that have been in the industry for a while realize it's still a machine, right? So it still has errors, it still overheats, it has component failure, and a whole bunch of other things. So to maintain that level of reliability, you again, you can be proactive from the human perspective, but to be proactive from the monitor perspective, where it is sort of self-seeding on its own, would be a nice thing. And I think eventually that'll come. I'm not a big um, proponent like Mark Cuban is of AI taking over robotics, and we become passerbys in the world. But the reality is the more we can apply data science and the AI component to analyzing what we have is only going to effectively allow us to run more efficiently and more effectively deliver the solutions that we have. So.
Yeah, I think it's something I firmly believe in. Automation is not going to take our jobs. It's just going to allow us to elevate to the next level of what we need to do.
I think it's going
Automate
to
the
give us more
process.
headaches. I think it's going to give us more headaches. Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, somebody has to do the automation, right? And again, it is a computer, it is a piece of code, it will break. So, I'm really not convinced my life gets any easier at any state of examples. So,
Maybe not for a while at least.
not till I retire, if that
Yeah, no,
ever
I mean,
happens.
well, maybe if the automation does really take hold, eh?
Yeah, you never know.
No, that's great, Tony. I mean, I guess again, from my perspective, it's really good. I've had a good insight of what you've been up to for a while, but I think it's really interesting stuff. And people don't understand that what level you're working at these days in BMW. I mean, from my perspective, it's almost become software in a car. So I think it gives a really nice sort of insight into the world of what you have to deal with and how you got from A to B. So I really appreciate your time.
Anytime, we're living in a world when I was a child was fantasy, right? We read about this stuff in books, and computers back when I was, and I'm dating myself now, but when I was in high school in the '80s, were Tandy TRS '80s that you were having the green screen, and you were punching some levers to get a guy to jump over a bar in decathlon or something. But the reality is with the Internet of Things, we're getting to the point now where we're starting to saturate our environment. Some good, some bad. I mean, it's up to the discretion of the user, right? But there are more IP addresses on my home network now than I ever thought would be possible. And from light switches to doorbells to iPads and laptops, it's getting kind of ridiculous. So we'll see. We'll see where the future lies, and maybe eventually, we won't have to actually go on to a video conference, and I could just, basically think about talking to James, and bam, there you are.
Well, that'll be an interesting one for the sequel in the City Screams 2022, maybe? We'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see.
give it a little bit more time, at least 2030. Remember everything that happened in Back to the Future, 1985 to 2013, whatever it was. That wasn't a big enough time frame for the flying car yet. So, you know,
This is true.
we don't
This
want
is
to
true.
overpromise. Remember, the number one thing is, under promise, over deliver. So,